It was a regular weekday evening at the Grand Elm Hotel. People were walking in and out of the wide lobby. Some were dragging suitcases. Others stood in line at the front desk, checking in after long flights. Soft jazz music played from hidden speakers. A few guests sat on couches near the fireplace, sipping coffee or scrolling through their phones. No one really paid attention to the man who walked in through the side entrance. He wore an old brown jacket and a dark hat pulled low over his face. He looked like someone who had been traveling for hours, quiet, maybe tired. He didn't speak to anyone, didn't ask for help. He simply walked across the polished floor and made his way to the large grand piano that stood near the center of the lobby. The piano was shiny, clean, and almost always untouched. Most guests assumed it was only there for decoration. Some kids had tried playing it before, but hotel staff usually stopped them. No one expected music to come from it, but that man, without saying a word, sat down on the piano bench. His hands rested gently on the keys. At first, no one noticed. People continued their conversations. A baby cried. Phones buzzed. A bellhop pushed a cart full of luggage across the marble floor. Then the music started. A soft sound came from the piano. Just a few notes, at first slow, careful. But then the notes became fuller, warmer. The melody grew stronger, more emotional. It didn't sound like someone simply playing for fun. It sounded like someone telling a story, one without words, one by one. People in the lobby began to look up. A man in a business suit stopped talking mid-sentence. A young girl sitting on a couch dropped her cookie and stared at the piano. Receptionist paused her typing and tilted her head toward the music. Even the hotel manager, who had been speaking to a guest, turned around. The sound filled the whole lobby. It echoed gently against the high ceilings and glass windows. It was the kind of music that made your heart feel something, even if you didn't know what the song was. People began to gather around the piano. Some pulled out their phones to record. Others stood quietly, just listening. The man kept playing. His fingers moved across the keys with skill and feeling. He didn't look up, didn't say anything. He just let the music speak for him. Whispers started to spread. Who is he? Do you think he's a professional? He's really good. Still no one knew who he was. He hadn't checked in at the front desk. He hadn't introduced himself. He was just there. And yet, something about the way he played felt familiar to a few people. A woman near the back narrowed her eyes. She leaned forward. She whispered something to her husband and pointed at the man. The husband shrugged, unsure. The music continued. It wasn't fast or flashy. It was slow and full of emotion, like the pianist was remembering something, or someone. The hotel lobby, once full of noise and movement, was now silent, except for the piano. Even the baby had stopped crying. Guests stood frozen, drawn in by the music and the mystery of the man behind it, and the man, he just kept playing, as if he didn't notice the crowd forming around him, as if he wasn't aware of the dozens of eyes watching his every move. He played like the piano was the only thing in the room. No one knew what was coming next. But in that moment, something special was happening. Everyone there could feel it. The man's fingers moved across the piano keys with calm and steady grace. His touch was soft, but full of meaning. It was not loud. It was not flashy. It was beautiful. Each note felt like it came from deep inside his heart. People in the lobby stood still. Even those who had just walked in through the main doors stopped in their tracks. Their eyes were drawn toward the center of the room where the music floated. Like a quiet wave, some guests held their breath. Others looked around, trying to understand what was happening.
Oh, yeah.
No one wanted to interrupt.
Oh, yeah.
No one dared to speak too loudly. It was as if the piano had cast a spell on the whole room. The hotel staff stood behind the front desk in silence. One of the receptionists, who had been answering phones all day, leaned forward with her hand over her mouth. She whispered to her coworker, "Do you hear that? That's not normal. That's something else." The coworker nodded without saying a word. He was too focused on the music. Near the fireplace, an older man slowly set down his coffee cup. His eyes stayed fixed on the piano player. He didn't blink much. He just watched and listened, almost like he was remembering something from a long time ago. The man at the piano had still not looked up. His face stayed low, his half hidden by his hat. His hands flowed over the keys, one song moving into another without a pause. He played as if he had done this every day of his life. His posture was calm, relaxed, almost too natural. People started to wonder again, who was he? A young boy, maybe 10 years old, walked up a few steps closer to the piano. His mother gently pulled him back, but he whispered, "I want to see his hands." She didn't stop him this time. Everyone was too curious. Even the hotel manager, who usually cared about rules and order, didn't stop the boy either. Then came the first clue. One of the guests near the front slowly tilted their phone and zoomed in on the man's face. After a few seconds, they pulled back in shock. "Wait a second," the guest whispered. "Is that really him?" The person beside him leaned in. "Who? You know him?" The first man showed the screen. "I think it is. Look at this video. Same style, same face. But why would he be here?" Still, the mystery wasn't fully solved. Some faces in the crowd were full of wonder, others full of confusion. Everyone had the same thought, but no one was sure enough to say it out loud. Meanwhile, the man continued playing. His hands never shook. His back never stiffened. He wasn't showing off. In fact, it looked like he was playing for himself, not for anyone else. Like this was his way of letting go of something he'd been holding inside for years. The mood in the lobby had changed completely. It was no longer a place of check-ins, luggage, and waiting. It had turned into a small concert hall, but without lights, tickets, or a stage. It was just music and people. A woman in the back wiped a tear from her eye. She didn't know the song. Something about the moment touched her heart. She wasn't the only one. A few others held tissues or turned their heads to hide their feelings. It wasn't just a piano in performance. It was something else, something deeper, something real. And still, the man didn't speak. He didn't bow. He didn't smile. He just kept playing whatever had brought him to that lobby. It was clear now he had come for a reason. That reason was more than just music. The man at the piano still hadn't looked up. His fingers moved like they knew the keys by heart, like they had been playing that song forever. But to the people watching, this wasn't just a song. It felt like a story was being told. One they couldn't see, but they could feel. Whispers had started to spread in the crowd. "He looks familiar. I've seen that face before. He plays too perfectly to be just a guest." A few people near the back of the group quietly searched on their phones. They typed things like famous pianist, missing music star, and man playing. Piano hotel. One of them found an old video of a man playing the same song on stage years ago. The hands, the style. Even the slight tilt of the head, it all matched. Could it really be him? A woman with short gray hair slowly walked forward. She looked closer at the man on the piano, her mouth slightly open. Her hand rested on her chest as her eyes filled with emotion. She whispered to no one in particular, "It is him." His concert 10 years ago? He disappeared after his wife died. Everyone thought he would never play again. But no one said his name out loud, not yet. People were still unsure, still afraid of breaking the magic in the air. The man hadn't asked for attention. He didn't come with an announcement or a crowd. He came alone, quiet, hidden. And somehow, that made the moment feel even more powerful. Across the lobby, the hotel manager stood near the front desk. She usually stayed calm, even during busy hours. But now, even she looked nervous. She leaned toward one of the bellboys and whispered, "Should we say something?" The bellboy shook his head. "No, just let him play. Everyone's listening," and it was true. The sound of the piano was the only thing filling the large space. No phones rang. No one laughed. Even the usual hotel sounds, elevators, doors, carts seemed to fade away. The music grew softer, then louder, then soft again like waves in the ocean. The man wasn't rushing. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was playing like he needed to, like he had something inside that had been silent for too long. People watched, not just with their eyes, but with their hearts. Some had tears. Others just stood frozen, afraid to miss a second. Then something happened. The man paused for a moment, his hands lifted off the keys. The melody hung in the air like a question. At that exact second, a young woman stepped forward. She had been sitting near the fireplace the whole time. No one noticed her at first. But now she walked slowly toward the piano. She looked unsure, even a little nervous. The man at the piano turned his head just slightly. It was the first time he looked up. The woman's lips trembled as she said a name's name. Everyone around gasped softly. The man gave her a small, gentle smile. He didn't speak. But in that smile was a whole story. Like he remembered her, or maybe just understood the feeling behind her voice. The woman covered her mouth and took a step back. Overwhelmed by emotion, a soft whisper ran through the crowd. "It's really him." People began looking at one another, nodding, holding their breath. There was no more doubt. The mystery was no longer a mystery, but now the question was, why had he come back? Why here? Why now the answer wasn't clear. Yet, but one thing was certain, the man who once left the stage forever had chosen this hotel lobby as the place to return, and no one who saw it would ever forget it. The moment the woman spoke his name, everything changed in the lobby. Until then, people had only guessed. They had felt something special, something deep, but they weren't sure. Now they were. The man playing the piano wasn't just some random traveler. He was someone they had seen in videos, in concerts, on TV. Years ago, he had disappeared. From the music world after something terrible happened in his life, no one had heard from him since. Some people thought he had gone into hiding. Others believed he had stopped playing forever. But now, here he was, sitting on a piano bench in a quiet hotel lobby, bringing music back into the world like he had never left. The woman who spoke his name looked like she didn't know what to do next. Her voice had been soft, but it had reached every ear in the room. She covered her mouth with both hands and took a slow step back. The man gave her a small nod, full of kindness. There was no anger, no fear, just a calm look, like he was thankful someone remembered him. Then, without saying a word, he placed his hands back on the keys and began to play again. But this time, the music was different. It wasn't just beautiful lit. It was powerful. It was the kind of melody that made people feel something they couldn't explain. Some guests wiped their eyes. Some reached for each other's hands. Even the hotel staff, who were usually busy with tasks, stood quietly with their arms crossed. Completely focused on the music, the piece he played now had ups and downs. It was full of emotion, pain, love, memories, and hope. It was clear that this was not just another song, so something personal. Near the back, a guest quietly whispered, "That's the song he wrote for his wife." Another nodded. Yes. She used to sit in the front row during his concerts. She loved this one. Now people understood even more. This wasn't just a performance. This was a memory being brought back to life. This was a man remembering someone he had loved deeply. Some guests started recording on their phones, not to share on social media, but to hold on to the moment. They wanted to remember this forever. They knew they were witnessing something special, something that wouldn't happen again. No one moved. No one made a sound. The man's fingers danced across the piano. His eyes stayed mostly closed, as if he could still see her sitting in front of him, smiling like she used to. He didn't need the crowd. He didn't need the attention. He was playing from the heart, and that was enough. The music built up slowly, then gently faded, then built again. It told a story without a single word. When the song finally came to an end, the last note hung in the air like a deep breath. For a moment, there was silence. Pure silence. And then, soft clapping. It started with one person, then another. Soon, everyone in the lobby was applauding, not loudly, not wildly, but with deep respect. The man stood up slowly and gave a small bow. His face was peaceful, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He looked around the lobby at all the people watching him. For a moment, he looked like he was going to say something. But instead, he just smiled, then quietly walked away from the piano. He didn't head for the exit. He simply walked toward the corner of the lobby where a soft chair was placed near a tall window. He sat down and looked outside, as if lost in thought. No one followed him. No one asked questions. They all just stood there, still feeling the music in their hearts. What they didn't know was, the reason he came back wasn't just to play. There was something more, and soon they would find out. The man now sat quietly in the chair near the tall window. Outside, the evening sky was slowly turning darker. A few stars had started to appear. Inside the lobby, it was still silent. People were still standing, unsure what to do next. No one wanted to break the moment. The piano, now silent, felt sacred. It had just carried a song filled with love, pain, and memory. The guests and staff looked at each other with soft, respectful eyes. Many had tears they hadn't wiped yet. Even those who didn't know the man's story could feel the weight of what they had just witnessed. But the question remained, why had he come back now? He hadn't performed in years. He had disappeared completely after the accident that took his wife. Music lovers had searched for him. Reporters had written about him. Some said he moved abroad. Others thought he gave up music for good. None of them expected this, a surprise return in a hotel lobby. Without any stage or spotlight, a hotel staff member quietly walked toward him. She didn't want to disturb him, but something told her to speak. She stopped a few steps away and gently asked, "Sir, may I ask why you played tonight?" The man didn't look at her right away. His eyes stayed on the stars outside the window. Then, in a calm and low voice, he replied, "Today is her birthday." The staff member froze. Her eyes softened. Didn't need to ask who her was. He went on, "We stayed here once, a long time ago. It was her favorite place, that piano. She loved hearing me play there. I haven't touched one since she passed, but tonight I had to." His words were simple, no drama, no big speech, just quiet honesty. The staff member nodded slowly. She didn't say much, just placed her hand over her heart and walked away, letting the man be with his thoughts. Word spread quickly among the others. Whispers passed from person to person. It was her birthday. He came here to remember her. That's why he played. The music had even more meaning. Some guests sat down nearby, not wanting to leave. Others took out their phones and began writing about the experience, not for attention, but to express what they felt. One man sitting with his daughter said quietly, "This is something she'll never forget. Neither will I." A hotel bellboy, who had been working there for years, stood near the front desk and said to another staff member, "I've seen a lot of things in this place, but nothing like this." Even the general manager, who usually stayed in his office upstairs, came down to see what was happening. He stood in silence as the piano player sat alone by the window. Then something unexpected happened. The man slowly stood up again. People noticed right away. Some stood with him. Others waited quietly, unsure what he would do next. He walked back to the piano, but this time, not to play. He gently lifted the piano bench and placed something inside. It was a small photo. No frame. Just a simple picture of a woman smiling beside the same piano. It's taken years ago. He closed the bench slowly, like he was closing a chapter. Then he turned to the crowd and nodded once. It's just a nod, but it said everything. Without a word, he walked past the front desk, through the lobby, and toward the elevator. People watched him go. No one stopped him. No one asked for a selfie. They just watched, quiet and full of respect, because now they understood it wasn't just about music. It was about love, memory, and healing. And in that one evening, in a hotel lobby filled with strangers, a broken heart had found its way back to the piano. The elevator doors closed slowly, and the man was gone from the lobby. Still, no one moved. It was as if time had frozen. The piano sat there, untouched again. But now, it felt different. It wasn't just a beautiful instrument anymore. It had become a symbol of something bigger, something deeper. Love, loss, healing. The staff quietly went back to their places, but their minds were still filled with the music and the man's quiet story. Some guests slowly sat back down, trying to process what they had witnessed. No one was ready to return to normal life just yet. A child who had been sitting quietly next to his parents asked, "Why did that man leave the photo in the piano?" Zekta. Mother smiled gently and replied because that was her favorite place. Maybe he wanted to leave a part of her there. That answer seemed to make sense to the boy, who nodded and went back to staring at the piano, his young mind trying to understand emotions too big for his age. In the staff room, the receptionist sat with a cup of tea in her hand. She kept looking at the lobby camera on the screen. She whispered, "I've worked here for 5 years. I've seen parties, weddings, even a movie shoot. But this was the most special moment." Her coworker nodded. And it happened so quietly. No plan, no show, just truth. Upstairs. In one of the hotel rooms, the man stood by the window, looked out at the city lights, thinking about the night. In his hand, he held another photo, one he hadn't left behind. It was a picture of her standing in the same hotel lobby many years ago, smiling at him while he played. She had been wearing a light blue dress. He remembered every detail, every note of the song he played for her that night. Back then, the world had felt whole. He sighed softly, not from sadness, but from peace. It had taken him a long time to come back. Years of silence, years of avoiding music. But tonight, something in him had changed. Maybe it was time. Maybe it was her birthday. Or maybe he just missed her more than usual. But whatever the reason, he knew it had been the right choice. Back in the lobby, something surprising began to happen. One by one, guests who had been there earlier walked up to the piano. No one dared to play it. But some simply placed their hands gently on the top. Others left small flowers or notes on the edge of the bench. A young woman placed up a folded napkin with the words "Thank you" written on it. Nobody spoke loudly. They just acted from the heart. Later that night, after the crowd had thinned out and most guests had gone to their rooms, a hotel janitor came by to clean. He noticed the photo inside the piano bench. He didn't touch it, just looked at it for a few seconds, then gently closed the bench again. He cleaned around the piano with extra care that night, even though the man had only played for a short while. Something had changed in everyone who saw it. People had arrived at the hotel like any other day, busy with their plans. But now they were reminded of something else: how powerful music could be, how deep love could go, and how silence could sometimes say more than words. And somewhere, upstairs, the man stood alone, but not lonely. He had played, he had remembered, and now could rest. The next morning, the hotel lobby looked the same, but something about it felt different. The chairs were in their usual place. The front desk was busy again with check-ins. A few kids laughed near the fountain, but everyone who had been there the night before carried something with them, something quiet and deep. The piano sat untouched. On its bench were a few folded notes and a small white flower someone had left. Guests walked by and paused for a moment, as if still waiting to hear the music again. But the piano was silent. Upstairs, the man checked out early, didn't speak much, handed the key card to the staff, and gave a small nod. His eyes were calm. There was no sign of sadness, just peace. He didn't ask for help with his bags. He didn't ask for a car. Walked out with the same quiet steps he had come in with. But this time, people noticed. Staff at the front desk gave him respectful smiles. A guest near the elevator placed his hand over his heart and nodded. The bellboy simply said, "Thank you," in a low voice. The man didn't reply. He just gave a gentle smile, then walked out into the morning light. The news had started spreading. Slowly, by noon, a video clip from the lobby had gone viral. Someone had recorded a short part of his performance and uploaded it online. Within hours, the internet was full of comments, shares, and questions. People wrote things like, "I can't believe it's really him. That music felt like it came from the soul. You can feel the love in every note. Sometimes silence is louder than words." But for those who had been in the lobby that night, the story was never about fame. It wasn't about a viral video or a surprise performance. It was about a moment that touched something inside them, a moment that felt honest, quiet, and deeply human. Later that week, the hotel placed a small card next to the piano. It didn't name him. It didn't mention fame. It simply read, "In memory of love, music, and moments that live forever." The photo he left inside the bench remained. There, carefully protected by the staff. They had agreed, without even saying it out loud, that it would never be removed. For weeks after that night, guests would sit near the piano and ask about the man. Some shared their own stories of loss, music, or healing. Others just sat quietly, letting the memory of that evening speak to them in silence. The piano became more than just furniture in the lobby. It became a place where people paused, thought, and remembered the things that really mattered in life. And the man, he didn't appear again. No interviews, no announcements, no concerts, but his music stayed. Not just in the recording, not just in the notes he played, but in the hearts of those who heard it. In the quiet memory of that night, the feeling that something truly rare had taken place. Sometimes it's not the big shows or loud voices that leave the deepest mark. Sometimes it's a single song, played by a quiet man for the love of someone. He never stopped missing, and in that one moment, in the middle of a hotel lobby, strangers became witnesses to something real, something they would carry with them for the rest of their lives.